Welcome to Al Bernstein Unplugged Unboxing. In a 40-year Hall of Fame career, Al has chronicled some of the greatest moments in boxing history. On this podcast, you get to hear him expand on those memories and talk about the current news in the sport of boxing. You also hear Al interview some of the biggest names in the sport. Here's Al Bernstein Unplugged.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. Happy you joined us because we have a couple of guests to bring your way on this episode. We're going to be talking with Brandun Lee, who is the very, very talented 140-pound prospect who is now 21-0, had a highlight reel knockout of Samuel Tea in his last fight, and appears destined for stardom at the very least in the sport of boxing. Can't ever tell for sure when a fighter's a prospect, but he seems to have all the boxes checkmarked, and we'll be talking to him. And I thought, as we do sometimes on this show, I wanted to bring on somebody who gives you another view of Brandun. Recently, we had Ray Salim on, and we had his promoter, Marshall Kaufman, on to talk a little bit about that end of what he was doing. In this case, I'm going to bring on a gentleman who has shepherded Brandun Lee through his initial television appearances, and that is Gordon Hall, who is the executive producer of ShoBox, the series on Showtime that has featured Brandun Lee several times and has now made him a fighter with a lot of buzz in the sport of boxing. And Gordon's going to talk a little bit about that end of the maturation of Brandun Lee and how he's contributed to ShoBox and how ShoBox has contributed to his career as well. You, of course, send us questions at Al Bernstein on Twitter, and we hope you keep doing it. Questions you want me to answer. And toward that end, let's bring in my co-host, Mr. Trip Mitchell. Hi, Trip. How are you?
I am doing great, Al, and as usual, fun to watch you on Showtime, and you guys had a very nice card the other night.
Boy, did we ever. Yeah, we had, in our main event, of course, Jaron Boots Ennis taking on Sergey Lipinets, and his performance was excellent. And he knocked out or stopped Sergey Lipinets and puts himself in line for some potentially really good fights. And that was a very exciting from one end anyway. It wasn't a super competitive fight, but watching Boots Ennis do what he did was remarkable. However, if you want to talk about competition, our first fight of the evening was, I think, an early candidate for fight of the year, Jerwin Ancajas, who has one of the 115-pound world titles, took on Jonathan Rodriguez. And it was really interesting because Rodriguez came in while undefeated and a mandatory challenger, kind of an unknown quantity. He had one good win amongst all his wins, but very little video existed of him, a Mexican fighter who had labored a little bit in obscurity, but had found his way to the number one mandatory spot to get the title shot. And watching this video I did see of him, and just from what I had heard, I thought he was going to be tougher than sometimes the mandatory challengers that are little known. He was that and more. He and Ancajas produced a brilliant 12-round fight. It was just superb. Both men battled away. It was fought not only in an exciting manner, but both men were very skillful in what they did in the fight. And at the end of the day, Ancajas won the match. The decision, I thought, was one score was 115-112, which made sense because there was a knockdown. Ancajas knocked down Rodriguez in the middle rounds. But then the other two scorecards were wider, and I thought made no sense at all because I thought the fight was a very, very close fight. But either way, you can make a strong case for Ancajas winning the match, and it was brilliant. And I think at this point is one of the early front runners for a fighter of the year for sure.
Well, let's get to our question. Mr. Bombay asks, after seeing Boots last Saturday, is he ready for a top 5 welterweight slot?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, that was his first fight against a world-class fighter in his battle with Sergey Lipinets. And, of course, he passed with flying colors. The interesting thing about that question is They believe he's ready. So Boots Ennis thinks he's ready. His dad, Bozy Ennis, his trainer, he believes he's ready. His manager, Cameron Duncan, he thinks he's ready. So they would accept a world title shot tomorrow if it was handed to them, which is interesting. And some might question that, but he's clearly, not only a talented fighter, but a confident one right now. It's unlikely he would get a world title shot at this juncture. Errol Spence is likely to fight Eudenis Ugas, who has another part of the world title. And Terrence Bud Crawford is not likely to fight Ennis at this juncture, the other champion. So where does that leave Boots Ennis? Well, it leaves him a lot of opportunities. There are the upper echelon fighters like Keith Thurman coming back after a long layoff. Sean Porter, who has shown a willingness to fight literally everyone, and he is just this much below Spence, Crawford. He gave Errol Spence everything he wanted in a fight that you could have scored for Porter. I think everyone knows that. Feels he would give Bud Crawford a fantastic fight as well, and he had a very close fight with Eudenis Ugas that he won, even though it was disputed by some people. So those fighters, you could make a case for Ennis fighting them. They're unlikely to fight him at this juncture. So the place where he's more likely to go is a fighter like Jamal James, who has a version of the 150 or 147-pound title in the WBA. Of course, the WBA has 4 different world titleists on some level, because why wouldn't they, right? There must be 4 worlds out there. But Jamal James is a very good fighter. But he's one that it would make a lot of sense for Boots Ennis to fight. And that would certainly be, I think, a makeable match. One other one that's interesting is Custio Clayton, who had a draw with Sergey Lipinets, the man that Ennis has just beaten. But many people believe Clayton might have won that fight. He's a very durable 147-pounder. And unlike Lipinets, who came up from 140, and people weren't sure his strength was there for 147. Custio Clayton's a strong welterweight. So those are 2 options that are open to Jaron Ennis. There's one thing I know. He wants a challenge in his next fight, and we'll see him against somebody in the top 10 in the welterweight division his next time out. A young man who hopes that pretty soon he can get to face a top junior welterweight at 140 pounds is Brandun Lee. Now, this young man has a remarkable story. He was 181-9 as an amateur, started boxing at 8 and was a phenom. Immediately, they knew he was going to be a very talented boxer, and he's certainly turned out to be that. He is 21-0 as a professional, 19 knockout wins, and the interesting stat about Brandun Lee is he has not lost a fight since 2014 in the Junior Olympics. So he's on a great run, and we had a chance to chat with him. Here's our talk with Brandun Lee. Brandun, you started at such an early age in boxing, 8 or 9 years old, that was there ever a time in your life where you didn't think boxing was going to be the dominant force?
No, not at all. It's just when I started boxing, just something that I was passionate for. It was just everything just clicked to me. Of course we had some downfalls, but I just kept going, and everything turned out well.
Yeah, your amateur career was superb, and you, of course, your dad not only taught you the sport but guided you through your amateur days, as he is doing in your professional days. What over the course of that time, and this is, I've known many boxers who have been trained by their fathers, and each of them each duo of them kind of deals with it in a different way. What's your way of separating out the father part from the trainer part and making it work on both ends?
Well, when I first started boxing, my father, he made it very noticeable that I'm the trainer, you're the boxer. I'm your father, you're my son. So, the student should and always respect the teacher. So it goes hand in hand with the father and son. You know, the son should always respect the father. So, you know, when we're in the gym, he's my trainer. When we're at home, he's my father.
So that you don't find is it easy to keep things at the office and then come home and have the regular father son relationship that you feel is appropriate?
Yeah, for the most part. Of course, you know, there's some days where where he forgets to leave the boxing in the gym.
Yeah,
But
mostly him, huh?
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. It's it's because it's a delicate balance. Your education has always been important to your family and has been an important part of your life. And in fact, you're currently a college student majoring in, I believe, criminology, correct?
correct. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. What year are you in school, by the way?
I'm a junior.
Okay, so you are a full-time college student, and somehow you're making that work with being a full-time professional prize fighter. Not an easy task.
Not at all. The first semester, I was a full time student. I took on like 5 classes, and you know, it was tough. There's times where I had to miss assignments because I had to go sparring, I had to go train. So this semester, I'm only taking one or two. I'm taking 2 classes. So we had to adjust a little bit. So now I'm a part time student, but you know, we're still getting the job done and working to the bachelor degree.
Okay, and you fully expect to get that degree, right?
Oh, most definitely. It's definitely
Yeah.
it's on my list of goals. So yeah.
And how important is that? Where do you put that in terms of, is that something that's really vital and important to you to get that degree?
You know, boxing always comes first, everything else comes second, but it is important to me just to make my mom and my dad happy.
Okay. Well, we do a lot of that to keep our parents happy, don't we?
Yeah.
Um, you were a boxing prodigy in some ways, and at age 14, amazingly, Tim Bradley and his folks called you to actually spar with him as he was getting ready, I think, for the Juan Manuel Marquez fight. Um, that had to be a unique experience for somebody so young to do that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I'm just this little kid sparring a world champion at the time. And it was just I know he was working with me, but at the same time, I was like just surprised that you know I was tagging him. So for this little kid, 14-year-old, to be tagging a world champion, that was shocking to me. And not only that, after we were done sparring, he said, "Hey, get in the ring." And I thought he was gonna show me something. He goes, "Can you show me how you move like that?" I was like, "What?" So yeah, but you know, overall, Tim Bradley is just such a humble, great guy.
Yes.
He lives down the street from me, so from time to time we see each other, and he's always giving pointers and tips.
Yeah, Tim is a great guy, and he's the kind of guy that I would think would be having him nearby and even having him as a resource is probably a great thing for you. You are a very powerful fighter. We know that your knockout ratio is huge, but you also think of yourself as a cerebral fighter, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I could box. When I first started boxing, my father taught me how to box. Not until later on, then I started developing more of a puncher style. But you know, I know how to box. It's just that I haven't had a chance to box.
Well, that's true. You haven't. You've been knocking everybody out, and your last knockout of Samuel Teo went viral. That was one of the most stunning knockouts, that we've seen in boxing in recent times, and that kind of garners you even more attention. Of course, you've been fighting on Showtime on the ShoBox series and getting attention as one of the hottest, if not the hottest prospect in boxing. But that knockout in this day and age of social media created the kind of buzz that kind of propels you. What does that mean that your next step is? I know you've talked about maybe wanting to fight for a championship as soon as 2022, but where do you think you're at now in your progression?
You know, I'm gonna be 22 this year, so you know, I'm developing. I'm becoming a man. Um, to be honest, if I had to choose, we just got the IBO Intercontinental. I would like to go get the IBO World Title by the end of this year. That's for me personally. But at the end of the day, it's all up to my manager, Cameron Dunn.
Yeah, Cameron Duncan's your manager, and of course, you haven't yet. I mean, to be frank, you haven't yet faced that top 10 opposition or somebody that's even nibbling around the top 10. So probably that would be the first step, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Or we could go straight to it. I'm sparring. These guys I'm sparring.
Right.
They're either former world champions, or top 10. There's a lot of Uzbekistan's guys out of here, out of the Joel Diaz camp. So I'm working with them today. I just got some rounds in with Omar Figueroa. So
okay.
I'm getting quality work.
So you feel like that experience with those world-class champions and former champions gives you the feeling that you belong in the ring with champions?
Most definitely. If I could dominate or be competitive with those guys, I'm sure that I could hold my own with anyone else.
Mm-hmm. The 140-pound division, which is where you reside at the moment, is a very talented division. And there is a major fight coming up, a championship unification match between Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez. And I know you have more than a passing interest in the people in your division. I'm curious, what do you think of that fight? What's your analysis of how that fight might go down?
If I had to bet money on it, I'm betting on Josh Taylor, because Josh Taylor, light on his feet, southpaw, good boxer, good punching power, good defense. Where Jose Ramirez, to me, is one-dimensional. He just comes forward, wants to throw body shots, left hooks, left uppercuts. Where Josh Taylor, to me, he's more loose. He does what he wants to do. Where Jose Ramirez, he does what he has to do. So I'm going with Josh Taylor.
And somewhere down the road, could you see yourself challenging the winner of that fight?
That'd be a dream of mine, to become undisputed. That'd be something.
Yeah, that's for sure. How long will you? How long can you stay at 140 pounds? Is this where you think you'll make your home for the next couple of years?
That's the plan. I made 140 easy my last fight. I'm looking forward to making 140 again my next fight. So I plan to stay at 140.
As I mentioned, you've made kind of a real reputation already this early. At this point in your career, and you've been a pro for 4 years. You turned professional early. You decided not to wait to try and go to the Olympics. So you've had a period as a pro, but you're just now stepping into the elite kind of situation. Do you feel like can you feel yourself over these 4 years getting better and better and better as a fighter?
Yeah, most definitely. I would say my first like 14 fights, I really didn't know what kind of style I had as a professional. Especially my pro debut, I went in there thinking that, I got these small gloves on. I'm just gonna go in there and knock them out. And that's not the case. I mean, I did knock them out, but I got hit also. So
yeah,
just because I'm strong doesn't mean I could just go in there and just knock these guys out. You really gotta set it up. You really gotta, it's like playing chess. You gotta make your move wisely.
You lead a very disciplined life. And I'm thinking that approach to life for a young man heading into a sport that's so mercurial as boxing is has got to be helpful. Do you see that as a big plus for you, the fact that you built into your DNA and your family life and the way you approach everything is a certain kind of discipline?
Most definitely. That's what separates me from the other guys. While they're out partying and, clubbing, I'm out, in my room playing Xbox or in the gym or something.
Yeah. And you come from a blended family in which your dad is Korean and your mom is Mexican. And so it's a rich, interesting heritage. What do you get from those two heritages that that you think uniquely makes you who you are?
In the boxing, we all know that the Asians they fight to death, and we all know that the Mexicans have a heart of a bull. So I feel like I have the best of both worlds, and it's very unique what I have.
And what has it meant outside the ring to you?
Outside the ring, you know what? I got to be honest, not too much because people look at me, oh, you're just Asian, because they don't know I don't look Mexican, so they don't think I'm Mexican. I tell them I'm Mexican, and they say, "Ah, you're just playing." So, but to be different, because I feel like you get Asian or white, Asian with some black. You never really get Asian with Mexican. So I feel like it's very unique, and I'm proud to be uh, half and half.
Yeah, and your journey at this juncture is one that I think everybody in boxing is really looking at you and with anticipation about what your future brings, which I think is probably a good way of describing the way you're looking at it too, right?
Yeah, of course. But at the same time, I can't let that get to my head. I'm still. I have to constantly tell myself, don't let the pressure get to you. It's just another fight. Take one fight at a time, and let's see how it goes.
What is next for you? What do you think the next few months will bring? When do you think you'll be back in the ring next?
I should be back in the ring June or July. Like I said, by the end of 2021, I'd like to get my hands on the IBO world title. Drawn Ennis went for his IBO world title last fight, and I'll like that's one of my goals for this year to get my hands on that.
All righty. Well, you're well on your way to making a very special boxing career, and I know all my colleagues over on the ShoBox side of things speak very highly of you, and pretty soon I hope I'll have a chance to call some of your fights on Showtime Championship Boxing.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Brandon. So I hope you enjoyed that chat with Brandun Lee. As you can see, he's a very focused and confident young man who seems to know exactly where he's going in the sport of boxing, and he's hoping that in the next year or two, he's going to be right into contention for the 140-pound World Championship. Now, the man who has put him on television in these recent fights and given him a window to the world is the executive producer of ShoBox on Showtime, Gordon Hall. And of course, Gordon, my compatriot at Showtime, who is a man who has done a brilliant job of making the ShoBox series very, very special. Gordon is also a vice president of operations at Showtime and has much broader responsibilities. But one of the things I know he's proudest of is how he has shepherded ShoBox as a tremendous series that has brought us dozens of world champions who used ShoBox as their chance to break into the sport. And Brandun Lee is the poster kid for that. I mean, he has had some amazing performances on ShoBox. And I thought it would be interesting to hear from Gordon about that process of getting him on ShoBox and how it helps his career. Here's Gordon Hall. Gordon, Brandun Lee, a young man who, of course, we're interviewing on this show as well, is kind of prototypical in a way of a number of fighters that have begun to make their name when they're on ShoBox and then go on to greater heights, oftentimes world championships. How does he fit in as a prototypical ShoBox fighter?
Well, I mean, we're always looking for the best talented prospects. How do you judge that? Well, first of all, it's amateur record. Brandun Lee had 195 amateur fights and maybe 5 losses. Right there alone is something that you can hang your hat on when you want to tell the story about a fighter and why he could possibly be, make it to the next level. Though with Brandon he did turn pro very young, as we're seeing with some of the other talented fighters that are similar in age now, in someone like a Devin Haney or even a Jaron Boots Ennis, who's fighting this Saturday. Brandon turned pro at 17. So he fought junior, but he did not fight youth or elite. He didn't fight fighters that were 22, 23, 24 years old, or 20 for that matter. So when you have a fighter like that, obviously that development is going to take a little time.
Are you, since he's come on ShoBox, the one thing that has been dominant in his performances is the explosive power. At the end of the day, that sells people on you as a fighter, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. Power, knockouts, everybody loves those, of course. But, opposition can also dictate power. And I say that only because his opposition has been fighters that have had, limited experience,
Right.
or in some cases experience, but we've brought him along. He's fought 4 times on ShoBox now, had a 5th appearance on Showtime, and he has, knocked out, 20 of his 22 opponents and done what he's had to do to date. But it's been a little strategic in bringing him along. And, it really wasn't until his last fight against Sam Tia where he really fought somebody of note, to know that if he were to stop someone like a Sam Tia, then that might be saying something. And plus, Sam Tia had beaten a lot of noteworthy prospects,
Right.
and was a big step up for fights. But Sam wasn't a puncher, but he was somebody that if Brandon were to stop him, there was no doubt that people were going to take notice.
You've been through this scenario so many times with dozens and dozens of young men winning championships from that started out on the ShoBox series, and there have been so many that didn't quite get to that level, but you've seen them burst on the scene. At what point do you kind of think in your brain, okay, this guy could make it, and this guy I'm not so sure? Does it happen at different points in their ShoBox journey?
I think, prospects come in, as they say, many shapes and sizes and various storylines. You can think that somebody is going to make it, and then they don't. Or you can get fighters to a certain point and think that they could get to that next level, and they don't. I mean, Chris, Avalos, excuse me. No, it wasn't Chris Avalos. I'm sorry. Adam Lopez, excuse me.
Adam Lopez, right.
So Adam Lopez, we got him to fight Danny Roman. He was a fight away from, getting to a title shot, and he lost. The same could be say, we can only get fighters so far, and then, they get that test. But there have been fighters like Robert Guerrero that lost on ShoBox and then came back to avenge avenge the loss, and then go on and win a world title, and go undefeated for his next 19 fights until he lost to Floyd Mayweather. So, there's many over the time. Our job here on ShoBox is to help develop fighters and turn them from prospects to contenders, and get them those opportunities to be able to fight the better fighters and win. But it doesn't happen without development.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, the trick, of course, for your series is you want to do that all the while creating competitive and fascinating fights. You're not trying to give people just a stepping stone. You put 2 people in together, and the question is, okay, which one of these guys will emerge as the contender? Well,
we want to make competitive fights. Earlier this year, we had Samson Lukowitz's Yace Solano taking on Lou DiBella's Myquan Williams, and Myquan Williams beat Samson's fighter Yace Solano, a battle of unbeatens.
Right.
But neither loss, the loss of Yace Solano in this case is not going to hurt his career. It's happening early in in his career. And, we want to be able to make competitive matchups. And I think most importantly, we have a lot of integrity on ShoBox, or at least we feel we do. And, we want to be able to tell a story how legitimately the red corner fighter can win,
Yeah.
or the blue corner fighter can win. And that's really important to us above anything. We're not here to be shills for any fighter, and we're not here to embellish any fighter,
Right.
because our audience is the core boxing fans. And I tell you, our audience loves Brandun Lee.
Yeah, you are so right about that. Let's get back to him. The thing about him that's interesting, of course, he's started when he was so young, and he's lived, eat, and breathed boxing with his dad, who you've seen so many times, fighters whose dads are trainers and have molded them since being a youngster. He seems so dedicated to the sport, and that seems like a big advantage to him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you follow him on social media, which he has a large social media following, he's always training. He's always working out. And, he has high expectations himself. And he's a wonderful, person, first of all. He's articulate. He's well-mannered. He is a college student, has good management. Cameron Duncan has had many champions in the past, and he's not just taking any fighter because he could have them. Cameron has a plan for him. We've had our discussions over matching Brandun, properly and appropriately, throughout its 4 times on ShoBox, and, really happy to have had him have that Sam Tia fight, which really, as I said previously, boosts his, exposure. But I want to see him take that next level.
Right.
I mean, I'd love to see, and you talk about who could he fight next? Well, maybe a Malik Hawkins. Maybe
that would be great.
Maybe a Sojohan Ergashev, who we had on ShoBox. Maybe an Ivan Baranchik. There are fighters that are there that I'd like to see him fight next, and hopefully we can, feature that on one more ShoBox, and have his graduation day. But he's exciting. He's got all the intangibles, and I believe he's the best prospect in boxing right now, and I also believe that he will be a certain world champion.
Interesting. He says his championship, he'd like to shoot for that championship certainly by 2022. Is that early 2022? Is that a reasonable expectation on his part?
Yeah, the only question that we could have about Brandun Lee, and I'd be curious about your thoughts about this, is that he hasn't really gotten punched in the face yet.
Right.
And he hasn't really, even in the Dakota Linger fight where he dominated Dakota, and the kid had Dakota, and he had tremendous will, but he connected a little in that second round against Brandun. And but we really haven't seen Brandun face a puncher. We haven't really seen Brandun get hit. He's been in fights where he could pretty much dictate the pace. But, as you look at fighters and how they go along, all you can do is judge on who they have faced.
Right.
And so far, he has taken on everyone in front of them and dominated them and knocked out almost all of them. So we could be looking at one of the next great fighters in boxing, and only time will tell.
Before I let you go, Gordon, I have to ask you, because I don't get this opportunity to interview you on, in the media very often. Over the years, so we always talk about the number of champions that ShoBox has produced and the careers that it has launched. Is that kind of I assume that along with just creating great fights, it seems like that would be a source of great pride to you and everyone that that's associated with ShoBox.
Yeah, for me, who was here for 10 years, working with Jay Larkin and having the opportunity to come on to be a part of ShoBox and sort of oversee the fights and become the executive producer and manage it. For me personally, it's extremely rewarding because there's very few things in life that you can really be a big part of. And I feel that ShoBox, I am a bit, it's been a little bit of my baby, so to speak, but it doesn't come without others around me that have been tremendously supportive. Steve Farhood, who's a good friend and colleague. I can't talk enough boxing with him, and I've learned so much from him. Rich Gaughan, our producer, and Rick Phillips, both guys that have been with me for 30 years, really, in other capacities, and then have grown throughout the company, much like myself, to be able to take on significant roles on ShoBox. The announcers we've had over the years, whether it be Nick Charles, who was a great friend and missed every day. Kurt Menefee was with us and had a great run and loved it. And of course, Barry Tompkins, you can't say enough about him. Raul Marquez has become a terrific analyst. Yes, and I believe absolutely. A lot of that is his development on ShoBox. The support we have from, David Dinkins and Steven Espinosa and all the people at Showtime, because what we do is unique and different. What our series stand for is not like any other. And so it is important. I think it's important to the sport of boxing. Yeah. It's important to the development. We're giving young fighters exposure that they never would have gotten 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And we're helping build them to give those opportunities that every fighter dreams of, and that's becoming a contender. So I think we're all very happy about what we've accomplished here at Showtime.
And rightfully so. It's a great mission statement. And for those of us that are tangentially on the cusp or the edge of ShoBox, you look in on it, and it's a wonderful endeavor, and it's a great group of people that makes it work. And I think all people in boxing have a certain kind of respect and admiration for how ShoBox has stayed true to its mission statement and just continued to do what it does at a high level.
And I cannot forget that Al Bernstein has been on ShoBox many times.
Occasionally, I will drop in on your group as a guest.
You are another contributor to this series.
Always fun. It was always, you look back at things in life that are grand experiences, and every time I've been privileged to be a part of ShoBox, it was that. Gordon, I appreciate you visiting with us. Thanks for taking some time to talk about Brandun Lee and about ShoBox in general. I really appreciate it. We're headed to, I think, a very exciting year in boxing and an exciting year in Showtime boxing.
Oh, yeah. I think, and we're going right into Saturday's show with Boots Ennis, who we had on ShoBox many times, helped develop him, another Cameron Duncan fighter. Cameron's got some really good fighters. Mm-hmm. He also has Brian Norman, another really good kid. But Jaron Boots Ennis, whatever we say about Brandun Lee and all those great things, you can almost just say the same thing about Jaron Boots Ennis.
That's for sure.
But Saturday is his defining fight so far as a pro. And, we're all really glad to see it. And I know Boots is too. Boots wants this fight. Boots wants to, go to the next level. And I think I look for a late stoppage in that fight with Boots being victorious. But
should be interesting. That's for sure. Gordon, thank you so much. Appreciate you doing it. So Gordon Hall, telling you, I think giving you some interesting insights into how it works with a young boxer getting on television, and how that series, the ShoBox series, can be helpful, and how fighters like Brandun Lee help make the ShoBox series something special. So that was intriguing, to be sure. A fighter that was on ShoBox early in his career is someone this next question is about.
It is. Joy Deep writes, how much do you attribute Tyson Fury's tremendous height to what he's accomplished?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and Tyson Fury was on ShoBox. I remember I I did one of my occasional appearances on ShoBox in doing his fight that was from England. I think Richie Powers is the fighter he fought. Tyson Fury, it's hard to separate out the physical attributes he has from his skill set. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm about to tell you how important and beneficial it is for him to be 6'9" and have a reach of 85 inches. This is all a big part of his success, but I don't mean it to denigrate the fact that Tyson Fury knows how to fight. He's got a terrific jab, an excellent straight right hand, and in recent fights has shown us really good body punching and a much improved left hook. So Tyson Fury knows how to fight, but all of it becomes a much more potent brew given the fact that he has that big height and big reach. And that height and reach has helped him in his fights with Vladimir Klitschko when he won the title, and against Deontay Wilder in his 2 fights with Wilder. Because he, in the heavyweight division now, you're facing big, tall heavyweights. Wilder's tall. Klitschko was tall. Joshua is tall, Anthony Joshua. So you're going to be facing big, tall heavyweights. And the height that Fury brings, which is just a few inches higher than most everybody else, and that enormous reach helps him control the action. And even though in this last fight against Wilder, he went against type and came on the inside to do a lot of the damage he did, he is aided and abetted greatly by the height and the reach that he has in these fights. I want to mention a friend of ours, Tommy Ankello, who has a great site, World Class Boxing channel on YouTube. And among the things that are discussed in many of the different videos is how a fighter uses height and reach, and anything about the sport of boxing, whether it's a learning tool or understanding the sport, you're going to find a video on that site, Tommy Ankello's World Class Boxing, that will help you understand the sport a lot better. So, and you can also see this show on that YouTube channel as well. We have Brandun Lee this week, but next week we're going to have his stablemate, Jaron Boots Ennis, who's going to be on the show, and we'll be able to talk to him about his career in boxing. And it's fun, Trip, getting some of these fighters that are just close to stardom, and then we can remember what they were like before they got there.
And we'll get them again in a couple of years when they're on top of the world.
Yeah, precisely. Then we can juxtapose what they said, what they'll say then with what they say now. Well, my thanks to Brandun Lee and to Gordon Hall for visiting with us. Thanks to Tripp, as always, for his fine job. Thanks to Let's Do Something production folks for making this possible. And we'll see you next time.